Alright, welcome. Today we're going to explore the idea that Solomon's Israel may have reached the entire globe, including the Americas, Far East Asia, and even Australia. The Bible clearly states in 1 Kings 10 that King Solomon exceeded all the kings of the earth in riches and for wisdom. And all the earth sought Solomon to hear his wisdom, which God had put in his heart. Solomon was the first builder of what we call Tartarian architecture, but what is usually classified as Greco-Roman. Except this was a time before Greece and Rome. Traditional biblical chronology places Solomon's rule from 970 to 931 BC, and the first Greek city-states would not come to prominence for another 200 years. And yet the Temple of Solomon was said to have massive pillars with huge ceilings, intricate carvings of angels, lions, palm trees, and flowers, as well as archways, inner and outer courts, and hundreds of windows. 1 Kings 6 states, on the walls all around the temple in both the inner and outer rooms, he carved cherubim, palm trees, and open flowers. He also covered the floors of both the inner and outer rooms of the temple with gold. And the temple and city were built on a hill surrounded by massive walls and huge bastions. We're told in the Bible that Solomon contracted the people of Tyre, the Phoenicians, to create this incredible structure, and that the Phoenician and Israelite navy would go on sea voyages for years at a time, returning with gold, spices, precious gemstones, and a special wood that has never been identified. 1 Kings 10:12 states, and the navy also of Hiram, Phoenicia, that brought gold from Ophir, brought in from Ophir great plenty of almug trees and precious stones. And the king made of the almug trees pillars of the house of the Lord, and for the king's house harps also, and psalteries for singers. There came no such almug trees, nor were seen unto this day. But where's the evidence of these sea voyages? If the ancient Israelites were really traveling the globe, wouldn't we have a record of this? The biblical text speaks of a far-off land called Ophir that took 3 years to travel by boat. And this was the land they got the vast amounts of gold for the building of the temple from. But no one has ever proven where this land was. This temple was the most significant palace in the era, and was what I like to call the first Tartarian building. But really it was said to be based off earlier Phoenician architecture, which originated from the Canaanites. These were the descendants of the people in the Levant, Syria and Turkey, who migrated to the region of Lebanon and Israel around 10,000 and 5,000 years ago. Oddly enough, the same region and time period that Göbekli Tepe and Karahan Tepe were inhabited. Anyway, the Temple of Solomon could have been the original basis for what we call Greco-Roman or Tartarian architecture, and this could be why we see churches being built in this fashion all the way into the 20th century. And some say these buildings go back further than we're told, and were built on top of much older structures, possibly going as far back as this worldwide culture that Solomon ruled over. There's enough claims as it is about the Phoenician people traveling the world and reaching America, but we gotta understand that especially during the reign of Solomon, the Phoenician navy and the Israelite navy were one and the same. King Hiram of Tyre was very close with Solomon and his predecessor, King David. And the Bible speaks of him as an ally to the Israelites, especially in naval excursions, because that's what the Phoenician specialty was. The Bible also says that the Phoenicians and the Israelites intermarried, and the tribes of Zebulun, Asher, and Naphtali all resided in Phoenician cities. These were the people that knew about the lands beyond the Pillars of Hercules, and of course Solomon, the wisest man to ever live, was made aware of this knowledge. The archaeological record shows the Phoenicians had colonies all throughout the Mediterranean, including Spain, Morocco, and Italy, and they traversed the entirety of Africa as well as reached into England and as far north as Scandinavia. We've also found ruins of them in the Azores and Canary Islands that could date back to this time period. They also had trade routes throughout Europe, the Sahara, and they utilized early versions of the Silk Road to trade with countries in the Far East like Babylon, the Zhou Dynasty China, and the region of Hindustan. That being said, the Phoenicians were a small and weak nation compared to the Israelites at this time. Solomon was the richest man on earth, and his exploits made the Phoenician cities extremely wealthy and powerful. He was the one who was said to originally fund their excursions and help them set up the colonies. But there's a weird story in the Bible that tells of a far-off land that's never been identified, where Solomon obtained the gold used to encase the temple, and an extremely fine mystery wood they called algum. The passage goes, "For the king had at sea a navy of Tarshish, with the navy of Hiram. Once in 3 years came the navy of Tarshish, bringing gold and silver, ivory and apes, and peacocks." And we have a story from early Spanish explorers in 1568 claiming to have found this land of gold, but evidence has never been found to back him up, although people have been searching. The Book of Kings says that the Israelite and the Phoenician navy sailed from the port of Ezion-Geber, a port in the Red Sea. So we know they traveled eastward, otherwise they would have left from a Mediterranean port. The journey was said to have taken 3 years, and they returned with billions of dollars in gold, and the mysterious algum wood, which they said was used to build the temple pillars as well as creating extremely fine musical instruments. Also foreign spices, and the peacocks, which has also been interpreted as parrots. Many theorize the land of Ophir referred to the people of India, which is very likely as it was a place filled with gold, spices, and of course peacocks. They would have most likely done their trading through the Silk Road, and the Babylonian merchants would have made products from India readily available to the Israelites and Phoenicians. They wouldn't necessarily need to take a 3-year journey just to trade. However, in Jewish tradition, Ophir is often associated with a place in India, named for one of the sons of Joktan, who was a descendant of Shem, one of the sons of Noah after the flood. Early explorers knew all of this, and they followed this trail all around the globe. A letter in the 1500s states that even Christopher Columbus thought he found the land of Ophir when he arrived in Hispaniola and saw the people adorned in gold. The explorers also thought to look to the west coast of North and South America. While South America is very rich in silver, it's not as plentiful in gold. But the native Peruvians claim there were massive gold deposits to the land west of Peru. West of Peru is open ocean other than small islands until you reach Asia. But there is one other place in America that has been theorized to be Ophir, and it's California. Not only does California have an abundance of gold at this time, but it also is home to the largest trees on Earth, making for a great building material for God's temple. There's even an old gold mining town in California named Ophir, after the legendary source of Solomon's gold. And there does exist an old legend believed by early Spanish explorers like Hernan Cortez that a race of dark-skinned natives inhabited California going back thousands of years. If evidence of this were found, it would be likely to conclude that these people may have come from the Fertile Crescent, but there's no evidence other than the old stories told by conquistadors. These stories of Ophir and stories told by native Peruvians caught the ear of an explorer by the name of Alvaro de Mendaña de Niera. He's most famous for some of the earliest voyages across the Pacific in the late 1500s. This man claimed to have found this gold in a place he named the Solomon Islands, but countless searches have come up with no gold in this area, despite Alvaro's claims that he found the legendary source of Solomon's treasure. But the theories don't stop there. One document of interest found in the General Archives of Indies in Spain dating back to 1519 describes how to locate the land of Ophir. The navigational guide started from the Cape of Good Hope in Africa, went to India, to Burma, then to Sumatra, to the Molucca Islands, to Borneo, to Sulu, to China, and then finally to Ophir, which was said to be in the Philippines. Other theories also place Ophir in Malaysia, or Japan, or even Australia, which is not that far off from the Indian subcontinent. And if the Israelites and Phoenicians were in India, it's not a big jump to say they could have been in Australia as well. In fact, groups in India were said to have migrated to Australia about 1,000 years before the time of Solomon. One artifact that comes to mind is the aboriginal depiction of the Great Pyramids of Egypt, found in Australia. The knowledge of the pyramids could have been told to the Australian natives by the men of Solomon's navy. We also have certain artifacts that turn up in America pointing to a possible early Israelite or Phoenician voyage. The Newark Holy Stones, the golden tablets of the Book of Mormon, as well as interesting depictions in rock art, possibly showing Phoenician ships and Eastern symbolism. What we do know for sure is that during the reign of Solomon, the Israelites along with the Phoenicians traveled further than anybody in history until the 1500s. Even if the land of Ophir wasn't in the Americas, they still managed to sail as far as Southeast Asia, all the way around Africa, and as far north as England, which is an incredible feat for ancient people in their small trireme ships. Not even the later Romans, the Chinese treasure ships, or the Polynesian wayfinders made it as far as the Israelites and the Phoenicians. This was the first colonial empire, and they may have had colonies that we still don't know about today. And there's also nothing that could have stopped them from sailing to the Americas from either direction. Solomon was the wisest man to ever live. He created the first Tartarian building we have records of, and he must have been aware of an entire continent on the other side of the world. That's all I have for you today. Thank you so much for watching. Go check out my other video on the Egyptians' possible voyage to the Americas, another interesting topic that ties in the Phoenicians and that region. Also, let me know your thoughts and theories on this topic down in the comments. Thank you so much for watching. This has been Tales of the Old World.